Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Michael Manfield. We warmly welcome the family of Colonel William Weston Hearne, who are attending this evening's ceremony. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by the family of Colonel William Weston Hearne and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Colonel William Weston Hearne. William Weston Hearne was born on the 17th of February 1871 in Bega, New South Wales, the son of William Goodall Hearne and Amelia Louisa Hearne. He moved to Geelong, Victoria, and attended Geelong College, where he excelled in his studies. From there, he studied medicine at the University of Melbourne. Known as Wes to his family and friends, he practiced as a physician and instructor at the Alfred Hospital in South Melbourne. Hearne served as a surgeon lieutenant in South Africa during the Boer War and was wounded. On returning to Melbourne, he married Alice May Grubb in 1904, and the following year the couple had a son, William Beaumont Weston Hearne. In August 1914, immediately after the outbreak of war, Hearne was promoted to the rank of Major in the Australian Imperial Force. He was one of the first medical officers to enlist and sailed from Melbourne on the troop ship Wiltshire in October 1914. Serving with the 2nd Australian Field Ambulance, Hearne undertook training in Egypt before landing in Gallipoli in April 1915. His superior officer later described his service in Gallipoli as painstaking and thorough. In August, he was promoted to Lieutenant Colonel and took over the command of the 3rd Australian Field Ambulance. Hearne was on duty from the landing until early December, when influenza forced him into hospital in Egypt. While he was recovering, Commonwealth forces and their allies withdrew from the Gallipoli Peninsula. Hearne returned to the 2nd Australian Field Ambulance as commanding officer. At the end of March 1916, he arrived in France with his unit and began to move towards the front. Hearne's work as a medical officer earned high praise. He was mentioned in dispatches at least 3 times for his constant and careful attention in establishing and running a main dressing station at Wardencourt in July 1916. He was made a Companion of the Distinguished Service Order. In November 1916, his work in recovering and evacuating wounded soldiers at Garda-Corps was acknowledged by the commanding officer of the 5th Division, Major General Talbot Hobbs. For carrying out his work under heavy fire, Hearne was made a Knight of the Italian Order of St. Maurice and St. Lazarus. Hearne did not stint in praise of his men, especially at the Wardencourt dressing station in July 1916. During that engagement, German artillery bombarded the unit with gas shells, but because the unit followed correct gas drill, no casualties were inflicted. Hearne noted that the 2nd Field Ambulance had worked splendidly under a constant shell fire. He described the work of the stretcher bearers as magnificent. His willingness to work alongside his men at the front earned their respect and admiration. In November 1916, Hearne was promoted to the rank of Colonel and became the Assistant Director of Medical Services for the 5th Australian Division. In the second half of 1917, the 5th Australian Division moved to the north of France and across the border to the region around the town of Ypres in Belgium. In late September 1917, British and Commonwealth forces began a campaign to force the Germans out of Flanders. Collectively, the engagements of this campaign are known as the Third Battle of Ypres. In mid-October, Hearne was working at the front line, treating the casualties of the major engagements along Passchendaele Ridge. On the 17th of October, 1917, while on one of his routine visits to a regimental aid post, he was struck by a shell fragment and killed. He was 46 years old. Hearne is buried at the Huts Cemetery in Belgium, alongside nearly 1,100 Commonwealth soldiers. His name appears on the Roll of Honour to my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Colonel William Weston Hearne, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.